Great. You're listening to CITR 101.9, bringing you live interviews with local activists, politicians, and policy experts from Vancouver and the Lower Mainland. I'm Armand Rana.
And I'm Alex Trabolsi. It's Sunday, October the 11th at 11:34 a.m. As you can see, we're not in the studio, but broadcasting from our various quarantine locations.
So we've been conducting interviews with candidates for the potential battleground riding of Vancouver-Langara for the upcoming BC election.
And today we're speaking to the Green Party candidate for Vancouver-Langara, Stephanie Hendy.
In the last election, the BC Greens surged to 3 seats and ended up with the balance of power. How are the BC Greens doing this time around in the polling, Alex?
Not too good. The polling-based projections from 338 have them only likely for 1 seat, which is Oak Bay-Gordon Head, the riding that their former leader, Andrew Weaver, was elected in, with the other 2 being a toss-up. One of those toss-up ridings is Saanich North and the Islands, held by the interim leader, Adam Olsen, and the other toss-up riding is Cowichan Valley, where their leader, Sonia Furstenau, is running for election in.
Yeah, you have to feel for the BC Greens. After supporting the government reliably for 3 years, they are basically on the verge of potential, political extermination at the hands of the NDP, partially due to the timing of this election. Their new leader, Sonia Furstenau, just had literally a couple of days to find candidates before the election was called. Anyhow, what do we know about Stephanie?
Well, Stephanie Hendy is an exercise scientist and disability advocate. She has worked for over 11 years in physical fitness and chronic health condition management as a personal trainer, kinesiologist, and clinical exercise physiologist. She also runs a blog called Enabling Fitness, where, amongst other topics, she debunks health and fitness myths. In addition to being a certified clinical exercise physiologist and a certified health coach, Stephanie has a Bachelor of Science degree in biomedical physiology and kinesiology from Simon Fraser University.
Hi, Stephanie. Thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Hi, Armin.
Yeah. Could you start off by telling us a bit more about yourself? Like, you seem to be having a relatively, peaceful life, having built a professional career in health and fitness. Why are you jumping into the messy world of politics right now?
Oh, that's a great question, Armin. So the reason why I wanted to get involved in politics is because I'm a person with a disability, and I feel that the government needs to step up and do a lot more to protect the rights of people with disabilities. And I've had some success in doing so in the past, where back in 2016, I had asked my MLA and my mother's MLA for help with regards to removing the age restriction on government-funded insulin pumps. So how British Columbia was back then. So I have type 1 diabetes. And so at the time, if you were under the age of 25, you could submit the purchase of your pump to pharmacare and get some reimbursement. But that there was this arbitrary age restriction such that I don't know why it was set in place, but either way, it was I was above 25, and I felt like, well, the cost of an insulin pump is $7,000 every 4 to 5 years, depending on how long the warranty is. So I approached Adrian Dix, who at that time was in opposition, and he has type 1 diabetes. And so I made my case with him and said, please, we really need to remove this age restriction. So he got Judy Darcy involved because she was the opposition health critic. And then they brought my case to the legislature. You can look back onto the Hansard report. They mentioned my case in the legislature. And at that time, the NDP decided to take a position stand on that. And so everybody with type 1 diabetes in the province voted for the NDP and got them into power. And then Adrian Dix was given the cabinet position of health minister. So that was in 2017. And then in July 3rd of 2018, literally overnight, it's like they released a press release saying that they were removing the age restriction from government-funded insulin pumps as of that day forward, that everybody of all ages would be able to submit their pump to pharmacare for 70% coverage. And that's a huge breakthrough, because BC would have only been the 3rd province to jump on board with removing this age restriction behind Alberta and Ontario. So all the other provinces still have an age restriction at either age 18 or 19. So having had that effect on being able to connect with a politician who heard me, but also getting a chance to affect a rule or legislation that would affect all British Columbians, that got me feeling like, okay, well, there's a lot more work to do. And like you said, I have a very comfortable life right now, which is why now is the time that I can afford to make a change, right? If your life's in turmoil, if you're living, paycheck to paycheck, or you don't feel safe or secure in your housing or in feeding yourself, those are going to be your survival priorities, right? You're not going to have the bandwidth to be able to run for public office. So, I had decided I wanted to run back in February of this year. And so I was preparing for the scheduled election, which would have been October next year. So, certainly to drop everything, with 2 weeks notice, like I still worked full time the first 2 weeks of my campaign. The only reason why I can afford taking 3 weeks off from my job is because one of those weeks was a paid vacation. So I only have I'm only missing one paycheck, which is still pretty, significant. That's half my wage, but, I have some savings and some resources to be able to tap into so that I could afford to do it this time around. So that's why all the things seem to line up for me to be able to step forward.
Yeah, so talking about your profession a bit more, on your Twitter, you state your profession as a disability case manager.
That's right.
Could you give our listeners an idea of what this profession entails and why it's so important in the role you play in improving accessibility?
Sure. So right now, being a disability case manager, I'm working for an insurance company. So what that means is that if you have a job and your job has extended health would be through one of a few different insurance companies. So most people use their benefits plan for things like going to the dentist or getting drug reimbursements or going to see a paramedical practitioner such as a physiotherapist or a massage therapist or that kind of thing. But a lot of plans also have what's called disability insurance, such that if you, let's say you mangle yourself riding your mountain bike and you can't work, then you can apply for disability insurance through your employer-sponsored plan. So what that means is that if you make that application, if I happen to be the case manager that's been assigned to your company's plan, then you'll reach me and then I'll get the application. Then I have to decide whether or not you're eligible for coverage based on how much you were injured, based on the contract stipulations that might be in place. And so most of the time we get a chance to give people money, but there's a lot of times where we don't. And so for a lot of people, people who are low wage earners or hourly earners, or even people that are subcontractors, they won't necessarily have an extended health plan. So if there aren't enough public systems in place to be able to protect people, then they're going to be really set back. That same person who had that bike injury now is going to, potentially miss three months worth of income, or they might not even be job protected, right? So it's something where, there's so many people who will get into that situation who will end up becoming homeless, because they can't pay for their way to live, right? And there's a lot of people who might not fall into the disability later category. They might fall into the disability since childhood category, like me, where, if that's been an ongoing thing, your ability to work is going to oscillate. It's not, a lot of people tend to think of disability as being like an on-off switch, like all of a sudden you're fully functioning or you're fully not functioning, but that's just not how it is, right? And so I want to change legislation within the government to be able to protect people when they get sick, or if they have a disability and they're just trying to get through their regular lives. One example of this that I think would be more equity seeking for British Columbians is that right now everybody has MSP if you're a BC resident, but BC MSP doesn't cover basic dental, vision, or hearing. So that's a lot of people that are working hourly jobs or working as subcontractors who have to pay, what, $400 for glasses, or, paying for an eye exam, and, going to get a dental cleaning is, $250, if that's a lot of people for a lot of money, excuse me, a lot of money for a lot of people to pony up all of a sudden. And if their options are to buy food for the week or go to the dentist, most people are going to buy food for the week, right? And so there's a lot of people that their health is deteriorating because of something as simple as, can I go to the dentist? Something that people who have money or have extended health plans don't even think about missing.
So in your career, as you said, you work with people living with a variety of disabilities. This pandemic has likely exacerbated the existing, inaccessibility of our society.
That's right.
Can you give us an idea of what changes you think the provincial government should be making, specifically in terms of helping people with disabilities get through this pandemic?
Well, for one, I certainly think that the disability amounts need to be increased. I think that more people should be able to access government disability easier. Right now, it's, people get lost in a lot of bureaucracy with filling out forms and that type of thing. But the biggest thing that I'd want to do that actually doesn't cost the government anything is just to remove the cohabitation clause. And so what that means is that if you're a person with a disability and you are receiving the BC government top up on your disability income assistance, you can't live with somebody who's an income earner. Otherwise, you forfeit your payment and you're considered that person's dependent because you're their partner. And that's abhorrent to me, because that's saying that people with disabilities are not, that they're second-class citizens, right? So what ends up happening is either they report their relationship to the government, and they go through an investigation to prove that they're financially independent from each other, or they don't report it, or they don't risk it, or they don't even move in with their partner, or, so the only way they get to keep it is if they move in with another person who's receiving disability income assistance. And that's just unbelievable, because if you and I are income earners and we live together, nobody's going to count our bills to see, well, so are Armin and Stephanie splitting their bills 50-50? Or, because Armin makes 30% more money than Stephanie, he's paying 30% more of the bills. Like, nobody has to subject themselves to that if they're income earners. But if they're getting disability assistance, they have to prove that they're constantly in need of that money. And that's terrible, because people with disabilities are already living shorter lifespans, have a higher incidence of depression and anxiety and isolation, and the government is basically saying you're never allowed to try to have a normal life. And that's, I'm not even on disability income assistance, and I take that personally because it's not helping anybody. So, and I think as far as helping people with disabilities through the pandemic, I mean, we've all been working from home for the past 7 months. There's been tons of people with disabilities prior to the pandemic who asked, hey, can I work from home? And companies would say, we don't have the ability to do that. We need to have everybody in the office. And so now this pandemic is showing that, well, actually, everybody can work from home. Most people can work from home. And, we also have to get rid of this notion that you have to be working 5 days a week to be considered valuable to an organization. There's a lot of people with disabilities who can manage a day or 2 or 3 days a week, but it might not necessarily be at regular intervals. And again, I think that's an issue with the employer, but it's also an issue with the government in saying, I think the government needs to take a bigger stand and saying, like, your duty to accommodate is going to go beyond just accommodating for somebody with a disability in terms of their workspace, but it also has to accommodate their work hours and their work abilities too, because that's, most people with disabilities do want to work if they're able to, right? But again, seeing this ability thing as a binary is super harmful, and it's not allowing people reward to be able to contribute to society in the ways that they can, when they can.
I suppose that in addition to that Or I'm sort of going to ask your knowledge about this. Does living with a partner, does that mean any sort of relation, or do they need to be married? What's that definition of partner that they put forward, if you know?
Um, so if you live with a roommate, they will investigate you. You will have to prove that that roommate that you're living with is not your romantic partner. So if you are living with any other person, if you are not living alone, right? I mean, if you're getting disability, so like if you're getting, often when people get disability income assistance, they're getting a combination of federal and provincial. Federal is Canada Pension Plan, CPP, and then the provincial government will give you a top up to a certain amount. I think that it's around $1,800 a month if you're a single person, and then an additional $300 a month if you have a child. So, I mean, I'm middle income now, and I can afford to rent my 1-bedroom apartment in Marpole, but most people with disabilities are not going to be able to. You're asking them to put 60% of their income toward their rent, right? So a lot of people aren't going to be able to afford living on their own unless they waited in line for a BC housing subsidized suite, which are so few and far between. They exist, but they're not, BC housing isn't being funded enough to be able to give those subsidies, right? So it's, you're always going to be having to defend your right to exist as a person with a disability if you're getting disability income assistance.
Right. Yikes, I suppose is the reasonable response.
Yeah. And there was a group of disability advocates, people that were part of disability advocacy groups that presented some regular human rights asks that they wanted the government to adopt, and that hasn't been adopted yet. Like, not only did they not get a response, but if they got a response, it was pretty lackluster, and nobody actually finished incorporating it into like the BC Human Rights Commission, which is just crazy. Again, people are being forgotten, so it's hard.
Right. Shifting gears a bit.
Yeah, sure.
Given the current political situation, configuration with polling and whatnot, the best likely outcome for the BC Greens would be that you'd be holding the balance of power, which is the status quo we're in right now.
Sure.
Could you tell us which party you'd be looking to support, and if not, what criteria you'd use to make that decision for what party to support?
Can you ask me that in a different way?
Sure. I suppose specifically for you, what would you like to see out of supporting a party in government in terms of policies, maybe around healthcare?
Okay, thank you. No, that helps it make more sense to me. I mean, it's hard for me to answer that because I'm certainly biased toward the Greens, so I'm running with the Greens.
So sorry to clarify, sorry to interrupt you. I think the question is really like, say you're in a situation like we are in now, right? Where it's a minority government, Greens holding the balance of power, and you have to choose between the NDP or the Liberals. Right, so you have to like decide which of these to support, or neither, or you decide I'm not going to support any government, and maybe there should be another election. So that's basically the question.
Right.
Oh, I see. Okay, so you were asking me who I would vote for if I couldn't vote Green?
Like if you're elected, so say you were elected and you're the only other Green elected in BC. So there's like 3 of you now, right? So you hold the balance of power. Okay, but you can't.
Oh, I think. Yes. Yeah. Okay. I think I understand. I think that would have to be. I think that would have to be legislation specific. So in the previous government in 2017, the Greens signed a confidence and supply agreement with the NDP to allow them to form government, which meant that we would have to support most of their votes as legislation was being decided upon, but there were a few times where we didn't do that. You know, Adam Olsen voted against the Coastal GasLink pipeline 14 times, you know, so I mean, I really think that that's going to have to be legislation specific. And that's also why we want to get more Greens elected, because we've shown that when you have a minority government, that actually protects British Columbians the best, because no one party can drive something according to their self-interests. There's somebody else saying, no, you have to win me over in order for me to support you, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that's how it should be.
Yeah, so I think like what would be the criteria or the specific legislation? Say, you know, the BC Liberals came to you and the NDP came to you and they said, support us for this reason. What issues, what would be your priority issues in terms of making that decision about which way to go?
It would be prioritized around the environment, and it would be prioritized around human rights. So it has to be something where I don't feel that the damage that one of these decisions, that the impacts of one of these decisions could make would hurt people, right? So if both options are such that both parties are going to have some casualties, for lack of a better word, then I'd have to look at which one has fewer or which one is going to have a smaller impact of damage, and then have to align myself with that.
All right. Do you have a follow-up on that, Alex, or should we continue?
I mean, I suppose continuing on with, let's say that you are elected into Vancouver-Langara seat, you would also have the ability to put forward private members' bills, but also push the government, whoever that is, to move forward on certain issues. Are there any specific issues that you would look to pushing them on?
Yeah, so I mean, aside from the ones that I mentioned that I want to accomplish, a lot of it would be health related. You know, I'd really want to make sure that diabetes coverage continues to improve, because we're looking to get continuous glucose monitors covered. I would also want to review the special authority form, because right now that's making it difficult for people to access the limited drugs on the Fair Pharmacare formulary. And I would also want to I'd also want to make sure that the disability rights got adopted. And there's a few other special interest groups, like the BC Epilepsy Society. They don't have any funding for more beds, so there's a lot of people that are being shipped to other provinces to get brain surgery, and they're dying in the process. So, you know, everything that I look at is centered around health and accessibility, and making sure that those things get pushed forward. So the members' bills that get introduced don't often look at the underserved groups, especially not as far as specific conditions.
All right. So switching topics again to something that's more of a developing story that broke on Twitter last night. You are a millennial woman running for elected office, and we wanted to get your response to this. So at BagCollar on Twitter shared this clip involving 9 BC Liberals, including the current leader, Andrew Wilkinson. Basically, it is, for our listeners, it is a send-off event to former BC Liberal MLA Ralph Sultan. The speaker, the person who's speaking in this clip, is BC Liberal MLA Jane Thornthwaite, who holds North Vancouver Seymour. I'm going to play the clip now. Let me know if you have difficulty hearing it.
My style, it's not Ralph's style, it's not a lot of people's style, but who's going to hold Bowinn Ma to account? So Ralph goes, okay, yeah, no, I'll do it. Yeah, I know, I've got to call her out and all this sort of stuff. Except for Bowinn is, very pretty lady, and she knows that she's got it, and she knows how to get Ralph going. And this is my roast part for Ralph. Day after, he's telling us in caucus that we cannot accept what Bowinn Ma says anymore because she's not saying the truth and she's taking credit for stuff that she shouldn't be taking credit for. So I go to an event, and one of them was the CAP-U Student Union Luncheon. And both Bowinn Ma and Ralph were stuck on the couch together, very, very close together for almost the entire time. We were supposed to be, yes, Ralph, you remember that. We were supposed to be networking and all this, but Bowinn knows how to get you. She knows how to get you. And she stood, there's these big couches, but Ralph would be sitting on one, say the middle of the couch, and Bowinn would be right next to him, cuddling, look at the cleavage there, and Ralph would be enthralled with her. And so I would tell people this story, and they wouldn't believe it.
Okay, I think that's enough of that. Yeah, what's your response to that? And have you seen this clip before? And
I saw it last night. I was pretty disturbed by it. It's really insulting for middle-aged, older white woman to accuse a young Asian woman that she's using her assets to cajole the oldest MLA in the legislature. Like that's disgusting. That's, Bowinn and Ralph had a fun relationship. She was the youngest, and she got the whole legislature to give him a standing ovation on his 85th birthday, and they got to know each other. And the fact that Jane had the audacity to say that Bowinn was doing that deliberately to try to block the success of Ralph, or to just try to kind of get in his way, that's disgusting. That's gross. There's no other women that have worked with Ralph that have been accused of that. And so it's just it's frustrating because it makes someone like Bowinn not only have to be the focus of so much backdoor judgments, but it's also meaning that other women like her who want to run are going to feel like politics isn't a safe place in British Columbia, and it's not, right? This woman, that group of 9 white people decided that that it wasn't a safe place, right? So I mean it's absolutely terrible. In that sense, I think the Greens are a little bit happy that the Liberals have kind of made their own bed to lie in through this campaign, with also the refusal of not having Laurie Thronis run again in Chilliwack, Kent, who was so clearly homophobic, paying to have ads in a Abbotsford or Chilliwack church publication, they're just, they got banned from all the pride parades this year, even though they were all online. And so it's, in that sense, I sincerely hope that our candidate for North Van Seymour, Harrison Johnson, gets elected, because we really need someone like him to be in the legislature.
Thanks for your heartfelt response. So we're just going to I'm going to read Jane Thornthwaite's 2 follow-up tweets. So she first tweeted, I have huge respect for all women who push through glass ceilings. I'm one of them, so is Bowinn Ma. Ralph Sultan has the same respect and a soft spot for his fellow UBC engineer, and I made light of that at a roast. I have always and will always support more women in politics. This was around 2 hours ago, and then 30 minutes ago, she added this. I wish to add this. The comments I made at the roast for my colleague Ralph Sultan fell flat and were inappropriate. I unreservedly apologize for making these comments. I have reached out to Bowinn Ma to apologize to her directly as well. I commit to doing better moving forward. Did you have any follow-up you wanted to ask Alex on that issue?
Yeah, I'm wondering do you think that apology changes anything about the content of the video, or is it something where you're shaking your head, so I'm assuming?
Oh, it's, I think she apologized because she got caught. I don't think that she, you don't have those kinds of assumptions brewing about somebody's intent unless you believe it. So I don't think that she understands how harmful that was, and the fact that none of Jane's other colleagues bothered to call her out and say, hey, that's inappropriate. Like, they just kind of went with it, which is pretty shitty, like, I hope that if I say something terrible that my friends are going to call me out for that, like, it's yeah. So yeah. I don't believe it. And but I also don't, again, she's yes, she's female and she cracked the glass ceiling, but when you're white and you have money, you still have a lot of privilege, right? So that's a lot of, it's the responsibility of people with privilege to pave the way for people who don't. And again, that's part of why I'm running, because I've always been a low to moderate socioeconomic status and a person with a disability, and I don't think that it's fair for the government to make decisions about income or housing when they haven't had that kind of insecurity before. So I don't think that. Yeah, I mean, I think Jane doesn't quite understand why what she said would be so harmful.
Right. So, sticking with controversial tweets, last week in a now deleted tweet, you stated, quote, have the BC NDP or BC Liberals, people of color candidates made life easier to people of color in British Columbia? Or, yes, any concrete examples, unquote. This was in response to CBC reporter Justin McElroy's observation that the Green Party's slate of candidates was the least diverse of any major party. He ended up apologizing, though some people did take issue with the apology. My question would be, do you think it's important for there to be a diverse field of candidates and or MLAs in the legislature from these parties?
Absolutely. Absolutely, I do. I deleted it and I apologized for it because it doesn't represent what I actually stand for. I reacted very poorly to Justin McElroy's accusation that the Greens weren't doing what we could to be as diverse as possible. So I apologized because when I saw the effect of what I said, and then I said it back to myself and changed it as, a woman needing to prove herself or a person with a disability needing to prove themselves. That's when I realized how harmful what I said was. So that's why I apologized for it and why I removed it. Because yeah, like I said, I absolutely think that there needs to be more people more people of color in politics, more of all underrepresented groups, right? The balance of power has been held by too many white rich men for too long. There needs to be a whole smattering of people of different colors, different orientations, different genders, different socioeconomic statuses. I want there to be more representation in politics. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, today's coming out day, right? So, I mean, I identify as queer, but I haven't been saying it much because I pass as straight and I pass, so I understand that, that kind of thing is not, I have that privilege of having the opportunity to not talk about that or not make that my focus. But what that means is that people who are openly gay or queer or non-binary or trans, not everybody has that ability to hide it. And I want more of that group to be able to feel represented or to feel like they can nominate themselves to run in an election. So yeah, like I said, I deleted it and apologized for it because it's not truly what I believe. I was reactionary and that was poor on my part for sure.
All right. We've reached the end of our interview. Is there any issue that you think is important that we may have missed?
Yes, absolutely. So all the parties are talking about various different methods about restarting the economy. And one of the things that I would like to focus on is amending the BC Employment Standards Act so that it protects more of the employee rather than the employer. And because there aren't really any safety measures in place for people that work in the gig economy or people that work on a per client basis. These are the groups that have been most affected by the pandemic. And so I think that this will only further drive home the point that we need to have a universal basic income, because people need to be able to still be able to afford to live even when, you know, business for them starts to dry up. Certainly, you know, UBI is more of a federal issue than a provincial issue, but there are certain things that the provincial government can do in terms of supplying supports. Because as it is right now, there's been a lot of supports for businesses with wage subsidies and that type of thing, which has been great. But I feel like the current world right now is really making a good case for there to be a universal basic income.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome.
So to close, you can find us on CITR on Instagram and Twitter, so check us out there.
Could I